Hi everyone, this is Yuvraj Walia, and I'm a high schooler that is a strong advocate of Proposition 14, which will help stem cell research progress in the state of California. Here with me today, I have Anna Maybach and Mr. Rob Klein. Rob is the Director of Public Policy and Government Affairs and Deputy Campaign Director of this campaign, while Anna is the Public Policy and Campaign Strategy Communications Director. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to interview with you.
Thank you for having us. This is a great opportunity and look forward to speaking with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so it's something basic. What is in fact Proposition 14?
So way back in 2004, there was an initiative to fund stem cell research for chronic diseases and treatments, to find better treatments and cures. And the money went out, and it established the basic research, the discoveries that prove that the stem cells can help for different treatments and new therapies. It went through various stages, preclinical, translational. Now it's in clinical trials, and it needs more funding to get through clinical trials, to get it approved so that this promising research can go on to patients, and they can get the benefits like we've seen in some of these full quadriplegics that couldn't move their arms at all, could hardly move their heads, now raising weights over their heads, texting. We have blind patients beginning to regain their sight, diabetics beginning to produce their own insulin again. But without this funding, these trials will stop. And essentially, these very promising treatments and cures will be pushed back to years. And so Prop 14 is to refund the science, keep it going, get approvals for these therapies that are already being developed, and bring the research to the stage that we're developing the next generation of therapies.
So it's all about the funding that Proposition 14 can give us to take this treatment to the next stage. And I think you mentioned a little bit about the previous proposition that actually started the stem cell research. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, maybe?
Sure. So the original proposition was Proposition 71, and it was passed in 2004. The federal government had banned funding of different forms of stem cell research, and some of them were the most promising for several disease areas. So there was a big gap, and the research was being delayed unnecessarily for years. Patients were suffering and losing their lives. It was having a grave impact on families. And we, as Californians, decided that we weren't going to sit around and wait for the federal government to fix the situation. So as we do as a state, we decided to fix it on our own. And so that's why the original initiative was written. It's led to some outstanding success stories. And so that's why we're trying to continue the research. And that's what the original initiative was for. And the new one continues and expands it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So about the Proposition 14's actual funding, how will we get this funding, and how may it affect the economy, especially with COVID and the pandemic that we're in? Will it have any positive or negative effects on what's going on right now?
So that's a very good question. So the funding comes from the selling of bonds. So essentially, you are taking a loan. The taxpayers give you funding. You pay it back with some interest over time. Now, most bonds, they sell in the first year or two when it's passed. If you have a $5 billion parks bond to improve state parks and infrastructure, you're selling those bonds pretty immediately. It's a pretty immediate impact on the state budget. They start paying immediately. What this does, it's novel, it's unique. You're not going to find this with any other bonds we've seen outside of the original funding in 2004. There's a delay of 5 years. So as we're trying to recover right now from COVID and its economic ramifications, this will not take away any funding that we need to recover. payments start in 5 years, then it slowly ramps up. The bonds are sold over another 10 years. So right now we're looking at very spread out payments. It's going to come down to an average of about $5 a person a year. And when you compare that to the fact that for most Californians, it takes about $7,500 a year for healthcare, it really puts that into perspective. Anyway, so that's where the money comes from, and it won't be taken away from what we need to recover. In fact, it'll be producing some stimulus that will help add to the money we can use for that recovery.
Yeah, definitely. I think that when you consider the potential effect it could have on the lives of people affected with these diseases, it's not much of a question, right? It's a definitive yes, because we really need to see this impact of the research that it can have on these families, and there's definitely some benefit to this. So about what you were saying just before I took over, what kind of stimulus could there be on the economy?
So when this funding goes out, not only does the funding itself go out, but people that trust the integrity and the success of the institute that's already put out the funding decide, I want to make the biggest impact with my philanthropy. I'm going to put money in on what they're putting money on. So for the first initiative, we ended up approving $3 billion in bonds, and people came in and put in another $4 billion of their own philanthropic money called matching funds. So basically we got double the benefit for what we ended up paying. When you factor all this money in and its effects on the economy, you're hiring new people, you're purchasing new goods and services. There's been a study on the original initiative by the USC Schaefer School of, I believe, Healthcare and Economics. And it found that for the original $3 billion, it created, just in the state alone, $10 billion in increased economic activity, $640 million in increased state revenues. That's money that goes right back to the state, and about 56,000 jobs. And jobs, more revenues, more economic activity is what we need right now. So when you scale it up to the amount of money that we're talking now, we're looking at about 20 billion in economic stimulus, 100,000 jobs, over $1 billion in new revenues. So you have all these benefits. They're front loaded in the first 10 years. So when you factor in how much we're paying versus what we're getting out of it on a stimulus level, there's actually no cost to the state for the first 10 to 12 years when you net everything out. In fact, for the first 10 to 12 years, it's producing more money for the state to deal with other priorities like education, the environment, housing, and things of that nature.
Wow, yeah, it definitely seems like it could really help the state recover from COVID even. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but how exactly does CIRM work? I know you said that they get funding from the state of California. What do individual companies do with that funding?
So it's the overall basis is scientists create applications for grants. It's basically writing up what they intend to do with the research money. They have to provide some evidence that it works. They have to provide an argument of why it's significant, why it's underfunded, that it can mean something to patients. It's not purely an academic exercise. And those applications are reviewed by out-of-state scientists, experts in the field, to make sure there's no conflicts of interest. We want to make sure that the money is going to the best project, not to the projects that is run by somebody that knows somebody. Once they score exceptionally well as far as their impact, their evidence, their potential, it goes on to what we call the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, which is essentially a grants board. They vote on which applications get funding. This is made up of heads of different institutes. It's made up of patient advocates, people representing the Alzheimer's community, cancer, ALS, diabetes, and the list goes on. Also to make sure there's not conflict at this next level, the applications don't have the name of the researcher. They don't have the name of the institution. All the voters know on this, all the board members know, is the recommendation of the science committee, so they know it's the best science. And people that represent institutions, whether it be Stanford or UC UC Irvine or UCLA, they are representatives on the board, and their insights are extremely valuable. Their experience is, in many cases, bar none, but they can't vote. So it makes sure that we avoid the conflicts, we have the best research, and patients really drive the decisions in what should get funding. And if you look at the record, we think that it's performed exceptionally well with this structure.
So I noticed that this is a very politically charged issue. Could you tell us a bit about who endorses it in a representative or like a California congressman?
Sure. So we have a long list, luckily, of endorsements on our site, but as you can tell by who's endorsing it, a lot of people think it's a great idea. So we count the governor as an endorser. We have the lieutenant governor, we have the secretary of state, we have the insurance commissioner, we have the speaker pro tempore of the Senate, the Democratic Party, several chambers of commerce, and the list goes on and on. And I believe that you've actually been quite successful in getting us many endorsements, which we highly appreciate. So because we're not a big corporate campaign, it's community, it's outreach, it's endorsements, and it makes all the difference. I would recommend going and checking out our websites. There's quite a few on there. And Anna, are there any you'd like to throw in there? It's quite a long list.
Yeah, we have more than 80 patient advocacy organizations who have endorsed, from the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, all of the California ALS Association members and branches. It's remarkable. I can't even articulate how many there are, but you should definitely go check out the website.
And that includes 6 Nobel Prize winners, and we could go on and on, but we're very proud of our coalition, and it's growing every day. And
then one other to point out is the University of California Regents. The Board of Regents endorsed us, and that was a historic endorsement since they have, it was their first, Rob, you might know the
Right, it's outside of the first initiative. It was the first bond initiative that didn't direct money explicitly for them that they've endorsed. So it was a big deal. It shows they see the value of this research.
Exactly.
Wow. And if I'm an individual, how would I be able to show my support for this proposition? Is there a way that an individual can endorse it?
Absolutely. You can go online to our website. You can go to yeson14.com. And you'll see a button there that says how to join, how you can help us endorse, or you can scroll down through the bottom of the front page and just put in your information, and we'll keep you updated with how the campaign's going, and give you some resources you can share with your friends and family, and hopefully convince them that voting yes on Prop 14 is the right thing to do as well.
In terms of stem cells, what do you think is the future for stem cell research after Proposition 14, and how do you think it could impact both lives and the healthcare industry moving forward?
Well, there's been a lot of progress since the first initiative was passed. The field has changed in many ways. What was a lot of theory is now reality, and there's been new theory that's come up. When I say there's a second generation coming, it's really fundamentally accelerated. So not only do we think that a large amount of these 90 clinical trials will end up in therapies that patients can access. 9 of them, by the way, have been considered by the FDA to be so important, to have such high levels of evidence, and to be such a breakthrough. They gave them breakthrough status, and they fast-tracked their approval. So hopefully we'll be seeing these soon. So we'll see a lot of these therapies coming out. We'll see a lot of new ones coming in. And now with the invention of CRISPR and some of these other technologies that you can blend with stem cell research itself, it broadens the horizons. In fact, a blend of genetic research and stem cell research that the Institute funded cured bubble baby disease, which is a fatal immune disorder that affects children. Anna, is there anything you'd like to add to that one?
I think you covered it. That was a really good explanation.
Okay, great, thanks.
So now that we know all about this Proposition 14, what is the #1 thing that we can all do this November to ensure that stem cell research is going to be impacted for the better?
The #1 thing you can do is to spread the word. We will be on TV, you'll see us in your feed, but you won't see much of us. We don't have the big campaign dollars that some of these campaigns are spending, $100 million. We're for patients, we're by patients, and so we're largely grassroots. It's important that people know the facts. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And if people really understand the successes, the potential, and the importance of this research, and therefore of the Institute, I think that they'll decide to vote yes on Prop 14. So if you visit our website, you'll find all the resources you need. There's videos you can watch of patients that have had extraordinary successes, a woman whose life was saved by incurable cancer and has now lived years and years beyond her original diagnosis. These are powerful, they're important, and if you share these videos and materials and discuss Prop 14 with your friends, your family, your co-workers, your neighbors, and get the word out, that's the best way to help out and be successful. Don't forget to endorse, and we'll keep you up to date, and go on social, like, subscribe, and see all the new content we have out. Share it, spread the word, and we rely on the coalition, and we think that this coalition is going to take us through. So please join.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
and also it's important to note that since people are already starting to vote, the greatest thing that we can ask for is for you to just spread the word, and like Rob said, follow our social pages and share our posts, and just if every one person could tell 10 people, that would be a lot of people that end up hearing our message. So endorsements are great, but mobilizing the people that already support us right now is critical.
Thank you. I think you both like really explained what it means for Proposition 14 to be passed and the impact it would have on the community. Thank you so much for taking the time out and allowing me to interview you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity and for all of your help. I believe we'll be victorious for California patients and their families, but it'll take all of us to get there. And so thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And to everyone, vote yes on Proposition 14 this November.